The sound of a car pulling into the driveway echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Thomas Beckett, the billionaire entrepreneur known for his cold demeanor and high-profile business deals, had decided to come home unannounced that evening. His sleek black car glided to a stop outside the grand entrance of his mansion, the headlights cutting through the twilight. He had been away for weeks, handling crucial business meetings, and tonight, he felt the urge to return to his lavish home without any prior notice. As he stepped out of the car and adjusted his suit jacket, a sense of anticipation filled the air, though he could not have known that his return would be anything but ordinary. He walked up the steps to the front door, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the stone. The door swung open with a soft creak, and he stepped inside, expecting the usual quiet of his home. But as he entered, his eyes immediately locked on a sight that stopped him in his tracks. In the kitchen, illuminated by the soft glow of the overhead lights, was Maya, the housemaid, standing at the sink, gently washing his daughter's hair. His daughter, Lily, had her small hands resting on the counter, her blonde curls damp from the warm water. The image of Maya, a woman of color, carefully attending to his daughter without hesitation or discomfort, took Thomas by surprise. Maya, dressed in her standard housekeeper uniform, was tenderly looking after Lily, who smiled up at her in complete trust, her tiny hands holding onto the edge of the sink. The scene, one of nurturing and calm, was so different from the cold, corporate world that Thomas was used to, it made his heart skip a beat. He had always been a man who controlled every aspect of his life, and yet here, in his own home, in the heart of his family, was a woman who was taking care of something he should have been, something that was supposed to be his responsibility. His gaze narrowed, his breath caught in his throat, and a feeling he couldn't quite place washed over him. His daughter, the one thing he cherished more than his wealth, was being cared for by someone else, someone he had always seen as just the help. His grip tightened on the doorframe as he watched the scene unfold before him. Lily's laughter rang out, light and pure, as Maya gently ruffled her hair. The smile on Maya's face as she interacted with his daughter was nothing short of genuine. And for the first time, Thomas noticed the way she had a natural warmth about her. Maya looked up and noticed Thomas standing in the doorway, her expression momentarily faltering. She hadn't expected him back so soon. She had heard the car, but the sound of it didn't register until it was too late. Her face flushed slightly, but she didn't shy away from his gaze. Instead, she gave a polite nod and turned back to Lily, continuing her task. Thomas remained frozen, watching the exchange. It wasn't just a simple act of cleaning or helping. It was something deeper, something more intimate. The bond they shared, despite the vast differences in their worlds, was evident. Maya, who had been working in his home for years, was not just a maid. She was a fixture in Lily's life, a woman who had become more than just someone to clean and cook. She had become a protector, a caretaker, someone who made his daughter feel safe and loved in a way he had never been able to do. Thomas's thoughts raced, and he couldn't shake the discomfort that had settled in his chest. He had always prided himself on his ability to control situations, but here, in his own kitchen, he realized he had no control over the most important part of his life, his family. Maya, with all of her grace and patience, had quietly stepped into a role he had failed to fill. The silence in the room thickened, the weight of it heavy as he stood there, unsure of what to say or do next. He had never felt more like an outsider in his own home. I was in a daze for a moment, but the sound of Lily's soft voice broke me out of my trance. "Daddy, Maya said we could go to the park tomorrow," she said, her voice filled with innocence. I blinked and turned my gaze toward my daughter. She was still standing by the sink, her little hands gripping the edge, her face lit up with excitement. She turned to Maya, who was now drying her hands with a towel. "Maya said you could take me, right, Daddy?" Lily repeated, her blue eyes wide with anticipation. Maya, who had been silently observing the exchange, looked at me briefly before turning her attention back to Lily. "I'm sure your father would love to take you," Maya said softly, her voice calm and measured. Her words were like a quiet invitation, as though she knew what would come next. But as the words left her lips, I felt a surge of frustration. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. I was supposed to be the one planning trips, the one making my daughter's dreams come true, not her. I had built this empire, yet here I was, standing in the doorway, feeling like a stranger in my own home. For a split second, I felt something I rarely allowed myself to feel: vulnerability. The role I had worked so hard to carve out for myself, the one of the all-powerful provider and protector, was slipping through my fingers. Maya was taking my place, and I couldn't let that happen. I forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Of course, Lily, we'll go to the park tomorrow," I said, trying to sound casual, but deep down, the words didn't feel genuine. They felt hollow, like an empty promise. Maya, however, gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the moment. She knew what she was doing, what she had been doing all along. She had been there for Lily in ways I never had, comforting her when I was too busy with work, holding her when she needed someone to listen. She had built a connection with my daughter that I had never even come close to creating. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm, to keep the frustration from bubbling to the surface. This wasn't about me, I told myself. This was about Lily. But as I watched Maya interact with my daughter, my thoughts began to race. How had this happened? How had she become the one Lily turned to, the one she trusted? I had seen Maya around for years, a quiet, efficient worker, doing what was asked of her without ever raising her voice. But now, I saw her differently. She was more than just a maid. She was a constant presence in my daughter's life. I watched as Maya gently brushed a stray lock of hair from Lily's forehead, her movements tender and thoughtful. She had a way of making my daughter feel at ease, of making her feel safe and loved. The realization hit me harder than I expected. Maya was filling the emotional gap I had left in my daughter's life, and it was something I had ignored for far too long. My thoughts were interrupted as Maya looked up at me once again. This time, her expression wasn't one of uncertainty, but of quiet confidence. It was as if she knew that she had earned her place in this household, that she belonged here just as much as I did, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't take that away from her. She had earned the respect I had failed to give her. She had become more than just an employee. She had become a guardian, a protector for the one thing I held most dear. As Maya reached for a nearby towel to wipe down the counter, I realized that I had been wrong about her all along. I had viewed her as nothing more than someone hired to clean and serve, but she had done something far more important. She had connected with my daughter in a way that I hadn't, and it was something I could never undo. My mind whirred with thoughts, but one thing stood out clearly. I needed to change. I needed to be a better father, a better man, and maybe, just maybe, Maya had the answers I was too proud to admit I needed. I stood in the kitchen, watching Maya finish drying Lily's hair. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound filling the otherwise silent room. I had been so caught up in my thoughts that I didn't notice Maya walking toward me until she stopped just a few feet away. Her eyes met mine, calm and steady. She didn't say a word, but there was something about the way she looked at me. It wasn't pity. It wasn't fear. It was something different, something I wasn't used to seeing from people around me. Maya had no reason to look at me with such composure, but she did, and it unsettled me. "Is there something you need, Mr. Beckett?" she asked quietly. Her voice almost too soft, but it cut through the tension in the room like a knife. I hesitated. My thoughts were racing, but I couldn't seem to find the right words. I had always been in control, always the one giving orders, but right now, standing in front of this woman, I felt powerless. She was standing there, doing something I had neglected for years, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I didn't expect you to be here when I got home," I said, the words coming out a bit sharper than I intended. Maya nodded, her expression still calm, her posture relaxed. "I've been here for a while now, Mr. Beckett. You've been busy with work," she said simply, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. The way she said it made me feel like a child caught in a lie. She didn't accuse me, didn't demand anything. She just spoke the truth, as she always did, and that truth stung. I had been so wrapped up in building my empire, in maintaining my position, that I had forgotten what truly mattered. I had forgotten the very people who should have been at the center of my life. My daughter, the one person I claimed to love above all else, had been raised by someone else. And here she was, Maya, doing what I should have been doing all along. The silence between us grew heavier, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a deep sense of shame. I had always prided myself on being a man of action, someone who made decisions, who controlled his surroundings. But in this moment, standing in front of Maya, I realized that I had been controlling everything except the things that truly mattered. Maya, I started, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't know what I was trying to say. I didn't know how to make things right. Maya didn't give me time to finish. I've been here for Lily, Mr. Beckett. She's a good girl. She just needs someone who can listen to her, someone who can be there, she said, her voice gentle but firm. It was like a slap to the face, but it was the truth. Maya was right. Lily didn't need a billionaire father who was always absent. She needed someone who would pay attention, someone who would make her feel safe and loved, someone who would show up when she needed them. I had failed in that respect, and no amount of money could fix it. Maya's words lingered in the air as she turned and walked toward the door, but before she left, she paused. You're a good father, Mr. Beckett. But being a good father isn't about how much you give her. It's about being there when she needs you, she said, her back still to me. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that I was trying, that I had been doing everything for Lily's future. But deep down, I knew she was right. I wasn't there for her. I wasn't present. And the realization hit me harder than I expected. Maya didn't wait for me to respond. She simply walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there, her words echoing in my mind. I stood frozen, staring at the spot where she had just been. For the first time in years, I didn't know what to do. I had always thought I had everything figured out. I had always prided myself on my ability to control things, to make decisions, to ensure that my family was taken care of financially. But I had neglected the most important thing of all, being there for them emotionally. And now, I was paying the price. I sat there in the kitchen long after Maya had left, her words still ringing in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the foundations I had spent so many years building were beginning to crumble. The silence of the house pressed down on me like a heavy weight, and I found myself staring at the empty space where Maya had stood just moments before. She had spoken with such certainty, such calm confidence, that it left me questioning everything I had ever known about what it meant to be a father, a man, and a provider. I was a billionaire, a man who had conquered industries and risen to the top of the corporate ladder. I had everything, money, power, influence, but none of it seemed to matter in the face of the simple truth Maya had pointed out. I had neglected the most important part of my life, my daughter. My mind wandered back to the earlier moments when I had watched Maya with Lily. The way she had effortlessly cared for my daughter, not just physically, but emotionally. It was as if she had known exactly what Lily needed, when she needed it. She was present in a way I had never been, and that hit me harder than any business deal or financial success ever could. I had been absent from my own daughter's life, consumed by my work, by the need to secure my legacy, to build my empire. But in doing so, I had missed the very thing that mattered most. I could build companies, acquire properties, and make billions, but none of that meant anything if I wasn't there for the one person who truly mattered. My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Maya. She had come back, and I could feel the weight of the moment in the air. I opened the door, and there she was, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. She looked at me, her expression unreadable, but there was a softness in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. You wanted to talk? She asked, her voice calm but firm. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. As she walked past me, I couldn't help but notice how different she seemed from the woman I had first hired all those years ago. She wasn't just a housekeeper anymore. She was something more, something I had failed to see. She had become a presence in this household, a force of stability in the chaos I had created. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where earlier I had watched her tend to my daughter with such care. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if we both knew something had to change. I finally broke the silence. I don't know what to say, I admitted, my voice quieter than usual. I've been so focused on everything else. I lost sight of what was important. Maya looked at me, her gaze steady and unwavering. You're not the only one who's been lost, she said softly, but the first step is realizing it. I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. She wasn't here to judge me. She wasn't here to make me feel guilty. She was here to help me see the truth. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly hearing someone. Maya wasn't just a maid. She had become the person who was keeping this family together in ways I had never imagined. "What do I do now?" I asked, the question feeling almost foreign on my tongue. Maya leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving mine. "Start showing up, start being there," she said, her voice calm but full of conviction. "It's not enough to just provide for her. You need to be present in her life. She needs you, and you need her." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so wrapped up in building my empire that I had forgotten the one thing that mattered more than all the money in the world: being a father. Maya stood up, ready to leave, but before she walked out the door, she turned to me one last time. "It's not too late, Mr. Beckett," she said softly, "but it starts with you." With that, she was gone, leaving me alone with the weight of her words. I sat there in silence, my thoughts racing. Maya had shown me something I hadn't wanted to see, but needed to. I had been neglecting my daughter for far too long, and now I had a choice to make. I could keep hiding behind my work, or I could start being the father Lily deserved. The decision was clear, but the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Still, for the first time in years, I felt like I had a chance to make things right. I woke up early the next morning with a newfound sense of determination. The house was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city outside. I hadn't slept much, my mind racing with thoughts of everything Maya had said to me. But now, as the sun began to rise, I knew I had to make things right. I couldn't go another day living in the shadows of my own failure as a father. I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me was not the man I thought I was. He wasn't the man who had built an empire. He wasn't the man who controlled the world of business. No, the man in the mirror was someone who had neglected his own flesh and blood, someone who had let work take precedence over love. And that man was no longer the person I wanted to be. I quickly dressed, making my way downstairs to the kitchen. I needed to do anything to show Lily that I was here for her, that I could be the father she needed. But when I arrived in the kitchen, I was met with a scene I hadn't expected. Maya was already there, standing by the sink, preparing breakfast. She turned as I entered, her face unreadable, but there was a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Mr. Beckett," she said, her voice steady, though there was a slight edge to it. "I didn't expect you to be up this early." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I couldn't sleep," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said yesterday." Maya raised an eyebrow, her expression softening slightly. "I didn't mean to push you," she said, but her words were gentle, as if she understood what I was trying to say. "You didn't push me," I replied, stepping further into the room. "You opened my eyes. I've been failing, Lily, and I can't keep doing that. I'm here to change." Maya nodded, but she didn't say anything. There was no judgment in her eyes, just a quiet understanding. She had seen it before men like me, who thought they had it all figured out, only to realize too late what they had been missing. I could tell she wasn't expecting an apology. She wasn't waiting for me to beg for forgiveness. What she wanted, what she had always wanted, was for me to take responsibility. And that was exactly what I was going to do. I walked over to where Lily's breakfast was set out on the table and took a seat. Maya didn't ask me to, but she handed me a plate of pancakes, and I took it gratefully. The weight of the moment settled in, and I knew that this was the beginning of something new. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to be there for my daughter. As I sat down at the table, Maya returned to her work, moving quietly in the kitchen, as if everything had shifted without a word spoken. I felt a pang of guilt as I watched her, knowing that she had been the one to hold everything together for so long. She had taken care of Lily, of this house, of me, and now it was time for me to do the same. I couldn't help but wonder if Maya ever resented me for my neglect. I had always treated her like an employee, never once stopping to consider how much she had done for my family. But now, sitting there, I realized how much she had done for me, too. Maya wasn't just a maid. She was a teacher, a caretaker, a person who had become a part of our lives without ever asking for anything in return. And I had taken her for granted. I took a deep breath and pushed the thoughts aside. Now wasn't the time for regret. Now was the time for action. I looked across the table at Lily, who was busy with her breakfast, completely unaware of the shift that had just taken place in the household. She looked up and smiled at me, her face lighting up with joy. "Daddy," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "Are we still going to the park today?" I smiled back, my heart swelling with emotion. "Yes, we are, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady. "We're going to the park today, and I'm going to be right there with you." As I said those words, I knew they were more than just a promise. They were a commitment to change, to be the father Lily deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally on the right path. I woke up the next morning with a sense of purpose that had eluded me for so long. The house was still, quiet, as I slowly made my way downstairs. I had told Lily the night before that we would spend the day together, and I meant it. But as I walked through the hallways, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my past decisions pressing on my shoulders. I had spent so many years focused on building my business, on proving my worth to the world, that I had forgotten the most important people in my life. Maya's words from the day before echoed in my mind. Asterisk. "You're a good father, Mr. Beckett. But being a good father isn't about how much you give her. It's about being there when she needs you." Asterisk. It was a simple truth, but one that had hit me harder than I had expected. I wasn't just providing for Lily financially. I had to be there for her emotionally. I had to show up. I took a deep breath and stepped into the kitchen, where Maya was already preparing breakfast. She didn't look up when I entered, but I could feel her presence in the room. There was something about the way she carried herself, calm, confident, and composed, that made me feel both humbled and ashamed. I had spent so long looking down on her, seeing her as nothing more than the help, but she had been the one holding everything together. She had been the one who cared for Lily when I couldn't, and that realization hit me like a tidal wave. I had been so blind. "Good morning, Mr. Beckett," Maya said, her voice steady as she set a plate of pancakes on the counter. I nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't speak right away. I didn't know what to say. How could I possibly apologize for years of neglect? How could I make up for all the lost time? "I'm sorry," I said after a moment, my voice quiet. "I've been so caught up in myself, in my work, that I lost sight of what really matters. I haven't been there for Lily the way I should have." Maya turned to look at me then, her expression unreadable. There was no judgment in her eyes, just a quiet understanding. "It's never too late," she said softly. "You just have to start now." I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. I had been given a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. "I'm going to take Lily to the park today, just the two of us," I said, more to myself than to Maya. "I'll make up for the time I've lost." Maya didn't say anything, but I could see the faintest hint of approval in her eyes. She didn't need to say anything. She had already done enough. She had shown me what it meant to be present, to care for someone without expecting anything in return. She had taught me how to truly love my daughter. I spent the rest of the morning with Lily, taking her to the park as I had promised. We ran, we played, we laughed. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly connected to her. I wasn't just her father in name, I was truly present in her life. I wasn't the man I had been yesterday, and I knew I could never go back to being that man. As the sun began to set, we sat on a bench, eating ice cream and watching the world go by. Lily's small hand reached out to grab mine, and I smiled, squeezing it gently. "I love you, Daddy," she said, her voice filled with innocence and trust. "I love you too, sweetheart," I replied, my heart swelling with emotion. In that moment, I knew I was doing the right thing. I had made mistakes, yes, but I had a chance to fix them. I wasn't going to let another day go by without being the father Lily needed. As we headed back home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just because of the time spent with my daughter. It was because I had finally started to understand what truly mattered. And as I walked through the front door, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life, a chapter where I showed up, where I was present, and where I became the father Lily deserved. I sat in my office, staring out of the large window that overlooked the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the skyline. I hadn't realized how much time had passed since that day at the park with Lily. It had been weeks, but the sense of change in me was undeniable. I had finally started to make up for the time I had lost, and it felt like I was moving in the right direction. Still, something weighed heavily on my mind. Maya. I hadn't spoken to her since that morning when I had promised to be a better father. I had kept my word with Lily, but Maya's presence had remained a constant in my life. She had seen me at my worst, had heard my apology, and had never asked for anything in return. I had to know where things stood between us. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over her number. I had thought about this conversation countless times, but now that it was time to actually make the call, I hesitated. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say. I didn't want to sound weak, but I also didn't want to act like everything was fine when it wasn't. Maya had been the one person who had truly seen me, who had made me realize how far I had strayed from being the father and the man I wanted to be. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. It rang once, twice, then she picked up. "Mr. Beckett," she said, her voice calm, just as it always was. "Maya," I said, my voice steady, but not without hesitation. "I just wanted to check in. I know I've been different, and I want to make sure everything is okay between us." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her processing the words. "Everything is fine, Mr. Beckett," she said after a moment, her tone warm but still measured. "You've been doing well. You've been present for your daughter, and that's all that matters." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "I just wanted you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've done. For Lily, for me, for this family. I've taken you for granted for far too long, and I'm sorry." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she wasn't going to respond. But then she spoke, her voice softer now. "You don't need to apologize, Mr. Beckett. You've already done what matters most. You're here. You're with your daughter." Her words were simple, yet they hit me harder than anything I had ever heard. I had been so focused on achieving success, on building something that would last, that I had forgotten the one thing that would truly give my life meaning, being there for the people I loved. Maya wasn't just a maid. She was the person who had helped me see the truth. "I can't tell you how much that means to me," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "But I still don't know how to make it right. I don't know how to fix everything." There was a long pause again, and when she spoke, her voice was steady. But there was something else in it, a kind of quiet strength. "Mr. Beckett," she said, "you don't have to fix everything. Just keep showing up, keep being there for her. That's all that matters." I nodded again, though she couldn't see it. "Thank you, Maya," I said, my voice full of gratitude. "Thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me," she replied. "I'm just doing what I can, but I'm glad you're finally doing what you can, too." I smiled, a real smile this time, not the fake one I had so often worn in the past. "Take care, Maya," I said softly. "You too, Mr. Beckett," she responded. "Goodbye." I hung up the phone and sat there for a few moments, letting her words sink in. She was right. I didn't need to fix everything. I just needed to show up, to be there for Lily, to be the father she deserved, and I was ready to do that, ready to face whatever came next. I stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the city below. The world felt a little smaller now, a little less daunting. The business, the money, the empire, it all seemed insignificant in comparison to the relationship I was building with my daughter. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be times when I would falter, but I was ready to try. I was ready to be a father, and that was the first step toward making things right. I woke up the next morning with a feeling of determination. The house was quieter than usual, a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. I had made a promise to Maya, and more importantly, to myself, that I would be present for my daughter, that I would be the father she needed. I had started to make small changes, but I knew that the real test was yet to come. I needed to prove to Lily, to myself, and to Maya that I could follow through on my word. As I stepped out of bed, I heard Lily's laughter echoing from the kitchen. It was a sound I hadn't realized I had missed so much. I walked downstairs, finding Maya already there, making breakfast. She looked up briefly, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that things were shifting, that I was changing. "Morning," Mr. Beckett, she said as she flipped a pancake. I nodded, unsure of what to say. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just a man who owned a business. I was a father, and I was learning to live up to that role. Good morning, Maya, I said. The words felt foreign, but they were sincere. I could see the change in her, too. Maya had never asked for anything, never demanded recognition. She had simply been there, steady and constant. She had been the one who kept our lives from falling apart, and I knew I owed her more than just thanks. I'm taking Lily out today, I said, breaking the silence. I promised her a trip to the zoo. I want to make it up to her. Maya gave a slight nod, the corner of her mouth curling into a small smile. She's going to love that. There was no judgment in her voice, no surprise, just understanding. It was as if she knew this was what I needed to do, what I had to do. As I turned to go, I caught a glimpse of Lily at the table, her little face beaming with excitement as she waited for breakfast. She had no idea what had been happening behind the scenes. To her, I was her dad, and that was enough. But I knew it wasn't enough for me. I needed to do better. After breakfast, we piled into the car, Lily chattering excitedly about all the animals she wanted to see. The whole time, I listened. I didn't zone out, didn't let my mind wander to emails or meetings. I focused on her little voice and her laughter, on the way she looked at the world with such wonder. We arrived at the zoo, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't distracted by anything else. I was just there, with her. We spent the day walking through the exhibits, talking to the animals, laughing at the monkeys, and taking photos together. It was simple, but it felt like everything I had been missing. We ended the day by sitting on a bench by the koi pond, watching the fish swim by. Lily leaned against me, and I put my arm around her, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't known in years. She turned her head up to look at me, her eyes shining. I'm glad we spent the day together, Daddy, she said. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on giving her everything I thought she needed: money, a big house, the best schools, but what she needed most was me. Not the father who worked constantly, not the businessman who was always on his phone, but the father who showed up, the father who listened, the father who was present. I leaned down and kissed the top of her head. I'm glad too, sweetheart, I said. I'm going to make sure we spend more days like this. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't perfect. But I was trying, and that was the most important thing. I had learned the hard way that being a good father wasn't about money or status. It was about being there when it counted. It was about showing up, day after day, no matter how busy or tired you were. I wasn't going to let that slip away again. I looked at Maya when we got home, standing in the kitchen as usual. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She knew. She knew I was trying, and she knew I was making a change. And that, in itself, was enough. I had already started to rebuild the relationship with my daughter. But it wasn't just about her, it was about me, too. It was about being the kind of man I wanted to be, the kind of father I wanted to be. And I knew that with Maya's quiet guidance, I was on the right path. As the weeks passed, I found myself spending more and more time with Lily. Each day felt like a new opportunity to be the father she deserved, and the guilt of my past mistakes slowly faded, replaced by the joy of being present. I had made promises, not just to her, but to myself, and for the first time in years, I was keeping them. I didn't need to be a perfect father, I just needed to show up. I was learning that the most valuable thing I could give her wasn't wealth or material things. It was my time, my attention, my presence. There were days when we just sat together, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes we went to the park, other times to the zoo, but the important thing was that we were together. I listened when she talked, I watched when she played, and I smiled when she laughed. I was there, truly there, in a way I had never been before, and every day, I saw a little more of my old self, only better, more focused on what truly mattered. Maya had shown me how to be present, how to truly care, and for that, I would be forever grateful. She had always been a quiet, steady presence in our lives, but now, I understood her role in a way I never had before. She wasn't just an employee. She was a guide, a steady hand that had helped me steer my family back on course. I owed her more than I could ever put into words, and yet, every time I tried to thank her, she would just smile and say, "It's not about thanks, Mr. Beckett. It's about showing up." And she was right, but that didn't stop me from feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her. I knew I would never be able to repay her for the way she had changed my life, but I would spend the rest of my days trying to be the man she believed I could be. One afternoon, as I was sitting with Lily on the porch, watching the sunset, she turned to me with a serious look on her face. "Daddy," she said, her voice quiet, "I'm really happy we're spending more time together. I love you so much." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't deserve them, not after all the time I had spent away from her, but they were the most beautiful words I had ever heard. "I love you too, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry for not being here before, but I'm here now, and I'll always be here." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that the life I had built wasn't about the mansion, the cars, or the business. It was about the people in it, the ones who mattered most, and I had nearly lost that. Maya had helped me see that. I couldn't change the past, but I could make sure the future was different. I could be the father Lily needed, the man who showed up every day, no matter what. And with that realization, I finally felt at peace. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be there. I had made the choice to change, and it was the best decision I had ever made. As I sat there with my daughter, watching the last rays of sunlight fade into the night, I knew I had a long road ahead of me. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready for it. I was ready to be the father she deserved, to be the man I had always wanted to be. And that was the most important thing of all. In this heartwarming journey, we dive into the powerful transformation of a billionaire who learns the true meaning of fatherhood and self-awareness through his relationship with his daughter and a devoted housemaid. As the story unfolds, we explore the emotional growth of a man who has spent years consumed by his wealth and business, only to realize that true fulfillment lies in being present for those you love. The story shines a light on the profound impact of human connection and the importance of being there when it matters most. This story is a perfect example of the types of Black stories that inspire personal growth, change, and reflection on one's values. Through the eyes of Maya, the Black Maid, we see how one person's quiet strength can shift the course of another's life, bringing them closer to what truly matters. These Black stories remind us that the simplest acts of kindness and the deepest moments of realization can change a person forever. The journey of self-discovery is not always easy, but it is in these moments that true growth happens. If you love inspirational Black stories that explore the depth of human emotion and transformation, this one is a must-watch. Discover how the characters in this Black story uncover the power of love, responsibility, and the impact of showing up for those you care about.